Okay, so in this video, we're going to talk about the hormones during pregnancy. If you watched a previous video, I kind of I explained the hormones that are part of the menstrual cycle and kind of talked a little bit about what they do for getting ready for fertilization. But these are specifically going to be uh, your hormones and how they interact with your body during pregnancy. So it's a little bit different. Some things might sound the same, but important to reiterate all of these things. So the 7 hormones that we have here are going to be estrogen, progesterone. I wrote these down because I always mess these up. Human chorionic gonadotropin, human placental lactogen, then we have relaxin, oxytocin, and prolactin. So first and foremost, we're going to talk about estrogen. So as we talked about during the menstrual cycle, it's just the same thing. Grows uterine lining. This is to get ready for fertilization after the follicle is released. Hopefully, it will uterine lining will grow in favor of fertilization. So we have uterine lining is growing. We also have endometrial growth, and that's kind of basically for the same thing. And the third thing that it does is going to be breast enlargement, which is going to be getting ready for breastfeeding and lactation. Then we have progesterone, which we also talked about during the menstrual cycle and when we were talking about hormones. So progesterone is what maintains everything during pregnancy. So the first thing that we'll talk about is it forms the mucus plug. I spelled that wrong. Too late to go back now, it's in black. This is the mucus plug when it is released from the body. That's what is the bloody show. But this mucus plug is important because it plays a role in preventing infection for the fetus. Basically, majorly, is just going to be prevention of any sort of infection. And next for progesterone, it inhibits uterine contractions. And this is important during pregnancy because we don't want to have any sort of preterm labor or preterm baby. So we want to inhibit those contractions to kind of try and keep everything inside. And that's why progesterone makes a big difference. So the thing to know about these two hormones is estrogen is kind of like the get ready hormone, and progesterone is the okay, let's maintain this hormone. So this comes first. And next we have human chorionic gonadotropin, and this stimulates estrogen and progesterone. Stimulates estrogen and progesterone production. We want to continue to have estrogen because we need the breast enlargement for lactation to help feed the baby. And we also need progesterone because, like I said before, it inhibits those contractions. And where is this coming from? So, if we remember, we talked about when we kind of went through this last time, stimulates estrogen and progesterone from corpus. Oh my goodness, I'm spelling that wrong too. Oops, I was thinking about luteinizing hormone, which we'll get to in a second. Oh, maybe spelling it wrong again. Corpus luteum. So the corpus luteum is, if you remember talking about it previously, it's kind of like the sac of follicles. And once one specific follicle leaves that corpus luteum, it begins to deteriorate and die. And once it starts to do that, it starts stimulating the estrogen and progesterone release. And we need that for the growth of, I forget what. And then we have human placental lactogen. This is where we talk about metabolism. So HPL is an antagonist of insulin. So if it's an antagonist of insulin, right, we need insulin in order for glucose to enter cells. And if it's an antagonist, insulin isn't going to be available and glucose can't enter the cells. So then we have a plethora of glucose just kind of hanging out in the body and not being utilized where it needs to be. So because of this, it decreases metabolism of the glucose. Now, this is what we talk about when it regards to like gestational diabetes. And the reason why it does that is because it's to favor the growing fetus instead of the mother kind of favors the fetus, which is a good thing, but also not a great thing. Next, we have relaxin, which sounds exactly what it is. It inhibits and diminishes uterine contractions. And diminishes uterine contractions. So not only does it inhibit and diminish uterine contractions, if you think about relaxin just in general, it's also going to be pretty much for every other place in the body. It's going to be for your muscles, for your joints. Like we talked about this in class today, something that's super important is making sure that the birth canal is going to be flexible enough and relaxed enough for the birthing process. So we have relaxin that's going to be doing this for uterine contractions, but also for the body to relax the muscles, the tendons, ligaments, regardless, like everything, in order to favor the act of birth. We have oxytocin, the feel-good hormone, aka in like a hospital setting, it's going to be pitocin. So what that does is it stimulates uterine contractions. So if we want to induce labor, this is where we're going to be starting like a pitocin or titrating them on pitocin to try and stimulate birth, but we can also give it for postpartum hemorrhage. So if somebody is at risk for or experiencing postpartum hemorrhage, we're going to give pitocin in order to hopefully get it to contract and stop hemorrhaging. And then we have prolactin, which is yet another pituitary hormone, and it is to stimulate lactation. Prolactin, prolactation. That is important for breastfeeding. Regardless of whether or not a mother is going to choose to breastfeed or bottle feed with formula, your body is still going to be producing prolactin, so you will still have the stimulation of like breast enlargement and cells producing milk. So those are all hormones for pregnancy and how they affect the body and the fetus.